Welcome to Because the Beatles, the podcast about the Beatles, everything about the Beatles 24/8. I'm Allison.
And I'm Erica. And before we start, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you're enjoying BC the Beatles, please feel free to leave a preferably 5-star review so other Beatlemaniacs can find us.
Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter/X, and now TikTok. We'll be posting videos, photos, and more from this episode and beyond. And don't forget, you can also email us at bcthebeatles@gmail.com.
So we have a special episode today. Last month, on the day that Now and Then was released, Allison joined some of our Beatles podcasting friends from Blotto Beatles and Ranking the Beatles for a discussion about that release. They talked about everything Now and Then, the arrangement, the song's history, Peter Jackson's video, the Red and Blue albums, and of course, that controversial cover art. So for the last week in 2023, we're revisiting the most exciting thing that happened in the Beatles world this year. And if you don't know those other two podcasts, hop over to their feeds and give them a listen afterwards. They're both fantastic, and we'll put links in the show notes. So enjoy, and Happy New Year.
Well, first of all, before we even get into it, we should all say hello and say who the hell we are, in case the people listening to our podcast don't know who everyone else is. But we've kind of like assembled like the Avengers of Beatle podcasters. We're like a 92 dream team of Beatle podcasters. I'm Jonathan from Ranking the Beatles. I'm one half of our show, and happy to be here tonight.
Hey, everybody, this is Tommy from Blotto Beatles here with a couple of the other Blottos as well.
Becker from Blotto Beatles.
RB from Blotto Beatles.
And last but I guess not least, Allison from BC the Beatles.
Yeah. Welcome back, by the way. Good to have you back in the party.
Thank you. We're very happy to be back, especially right now, obviously.
Yeah, you couldn't have timed it any better. I almost feel like did you time it like this?
Such a coincidence, you know? It's pretty crazy.
Wow.
Like,
It's just, the universe works in mysterious ways, guys.
Yeah.
Real quick, Jonathan, in the 92 Dream Team analogy, would you say I'm like more of the Christian Leitner, or am I like...
This is already more sports than I allow on my show. This is way too
Sports ball.
Clyde the Glide Drexler. No,
well, I'll take
no other choice.
That's great. Thank you.
I wanted to hear everyone's thoughts and then go around real quick, but I did have one note at the beginning. I guess I would just love if anyone had more clarity on it. Did the release of this tune seem strange and like it was really teased to us by Paul early? Was he maybe not supposed to say anything? And then we had the countdown to the announcements, and then we were getting the track like 1 week later. Like it just felt in like a traditional music release sense. It must have existed for a while. It must have been a lot of people keeping some secrets, but then the rollout just seemed...
Well, I have a very close friend who recently told me that she heard it in late September. And so it has
Who's
been...
that?
Yeah. Oh, Allison, hey, you're here. Yeah, that was you.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it's weird. Like either choose to surprise us or don't.
Yeah.
No, they couldn't decide if it was a surprise or not.
Yeah.
I heard, I remember back on like John's birthday. Do you remember the night before people were like, oh, it's going to be, the announcement's going to be made the next day. And then it wasn't. Or maybe it was even earlier in September. Cause I remember being like, I wasn't sure. But when I went to the listening event, they like told us all the marketing plan and the dates and stuff. But, cause I remember being like, are they going to do it this early? I thought it was going to be later in the year. But yeah, I remember there was like that one specific date that people were convinced, it was going to come out.
Yeah. And then they blamed Taylor Swift, or like all of the fans blamed Taylor Swift because she also like put out a release or something that day. And then
they blamed like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, exactly. So I just couldn't tell. It seemed, and I want to talk about the video deeper. It seems like things might have been a little rushed across the board, but I can't tell why. I can't tell why.
To speak to what you're saying about just kind of the timing of it, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. It felt like, the Stones teased their record for what seemed like 2, maybe 3 months. And with this being, publicly like a week at most, that's kind of what I think is all that they need for a song. Because really, the red and blue compilations are kind of forgotten in this discussion already. Like no one's really talking about that. It's all about the new song. And I think, without a bigger product to push, like something really new and innovative and important, I think 1 week is kind of perfect. Otherwise, like, how long do you want to build up the excitement for a song before people are just going to go, I don't give a shit anymore. Like, drop it or don't. I don't care.
And I think maybe I feel the buildup was there because the world that I'm living in was talking about it so much also. Like I do feel like it was built up, but certainly not in the press way. It was built up because like every day.
Well, it's also a Beatles song. So, I mean, you have somebody like Beyonce, right, who drops her albums in the middle of the night. I think Taylor Swift did that, right, a couple weeks ago. So it's, they could have feasibly done that and it would have been a sensation.
Yeah. And just went up to it. Sure.
Yeah. But so the song comes out on Thursday. And what was everyone's
classic music drop day?
Right. Got him.
Go back. Historically, Thursday's the big day for a music drop.
What was everyone's first listen? Now, obviously, Allison, you heard it first. So maybe let's start with you because you kind of got to hold on to this, secret for a while. What was the first listen like for you? What were your first impressions? What are your impressions now, a month or two?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been sitting on it for a while. And, we weren't even allowed to say that there was an event. This is the first Beatles event I've ever gone to where we had to sign an NDA.
Wow.
Yeah. So we literally weren't even, allowed to acknowledge.
Donovan's allowed, right?
Yes.
That's what that stands for.
They don't like Scottish troubadours, very, very anti that. So yeah, they played the documentary first, which I love. I'm assuming we're going to get into that. And then the song by itself, and then the video. And then they did play us some tracks from the Red and Blue. They played us like the Atmos mix for I Am the Walrus, which was pretty crazy, as you can imagine. But hearing this song was, I don't know, I didn't really know what to expect going into it, and I tried to keep an open mind. And I know that the demo or the bootleg of Now and Then has been sort of floating around the internet for years, but I'd never heard it. I had no familiarity of it whatsoever. And I liked it. I still like it. I think it taps into the sentimentality maybe people want nowadays. It sort of like has a nostalgic feeling. I think the McLennan shippers are pretty happy with it. Especially since that cassette tape said For Paul on it. Hey.
Has that ever been verified?
Becker and I almost fight about that this week.
That was on my list. That's on my list of questions to ask. Where I don't know. I guess I forget where I heard that. Yeah, we've all heard it, I think. But for me, some of that language has been erased in the marketing for this. Paul doesn't say it at all. He doesn't say it in the documentary. And why wouldn't they be using the tape with the writing that says For Paul on it in all of the marketing stuff? Like,
that's a really good question.
I thought it was weird that we've never seen it. Like, I tried to look for it. The Guardian article says it. It's quoted in there. Tommy sent that to me when I questioned him. But it seems to be like that myth's wiped a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah,
I want to hear from anyone. What's the definitive? Please.
Sure. Well, one point that I was in New York last week and I had drinks with, I'm going to give him credit, with Rob Sheffield. And he said, he made a really good point where it's like, if it's not about Paul, it would have been on Double Fantasy. If it were about Yoko, it would have been, right in that pocket. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, and I don't know. I think the lyrics fit. It doesn't have to be like in a romantic way, but I could see that, late 70s, he's probably reflecting, getting back into music. I could see it. Now, whether or not it's up for Paul, like, why haven't we seen the tape? Bring out that tape. Let's see button back images,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think saying Now and Then I miss you about Yoko wouldn't even make sense because he's with her all the time. That's
unless you're in LA when you're first writing it,
Right.
I thought that Now and Then sentiment is not something you say to a loved one. Like, I don't believe that it's fully about Paul. Like, I do believe it's sort of running the line. But the Now and Then thing, it is a very sort of like, think about you now and then. Like, what, you would only say that in the context of a different relationship, I think, and maybe be a little tongue in cheeky about it or something like that. But I don't even think that Paul seems to be playing off that as much in the release or any of that. Like, for me, I really feel like it does end up being kind of like a love letter repositioned to like us as listeners. Like, I think the way that I feel it signs off in the tune, I feel more like it's talking to us, like fandom, and maybe that's just because what I want to see in it. But like, that's how I feel it's positioned.
Maybe it was for Julian.
Yeah.
Oh, is that?
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, too soon.
Yeah. I
Sorry.
I think Paul also like keeps his cards so like close to the vest, and I'm sure at some point it'll come up, the Carl Perkins story about the last thing that John supposedly said to Paul, think about me now and then, old friend. I don't think Paul has ever verified that story. Carl Perkins is on the record with that story, but Paul is not. And I would have to imagine if that came up, if a journalist asked him about it and said, hey, I heard this thing about Carl Perkins saying the story, like, what's the deal on it? And Paul's never commented on it. He might not want to talk about it. So it may just be something that is just, and I think that maybe leads to the greater kind of, quest for this song is like, this is an intensely personal thing to him, on a really deep level.
But it did make me bummed, and it must speak to the condition she's in, that we don't have any Yoko at all, right? Like, there's no Yoko in the documentary. You don't even get a voiceover bite or something like that. Like, she's probably in the best position to set the stage a bit, especially if Paul's not going to give us anything, and we just get Sean, right? Like, clearly he's the official mouthpiece, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, as we're talking about like the title and does it relate to Paul or to Yoko or whatever, the thing I'm surprised no one, or maybe it's just, I haven't seen anyone talk about, is like the literal way the song's assembled tied to the title. The idea that so much is now and so much is then, like, and you couldn't forecast a better way for this thing to come out with that song title. This idea that we're getting this George Harrison guitar part from the anthology that is wherever it is in the mix, but it's recorded closer to the original recording that John demoed by about a decade than it is to today, and that blows my mind, right? Yeah. That is wild.
Yeah.
And like, is there? I have my feelings on the song. I want to get into that, but is there a more perfect conclusion in that way that like, in 1970, whatever, do we have an exact date? Is it 74? Is it 77 that he recorded it?
77, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So, that John Lennon writes a song called Now and Then in 77 that ends up being the end point on the Beatles' career that's going to be recorded, decades in the future, with technology that John had no idea, could never have imagined would exist. I don't know. There's a weird poetry there.
Yeah, so many great Beatle things are oddly poetic, or, just seem like the strangest kind of luck that brings these things about, almost like it's written by somebody. It's just like, it's just so cosmically weird sometimes.
It's the AI.
One of those things. It's the AI. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
for me, I constantly struggle with sort of older musicians that are putting out new work, and like, how are we supposed to compare music these days? Like, is it against their catalog? Is it against contemporary music? Does it bring joy? And for me, like, this time around, I was just like, I chose joy. When I was 14 years old and I got Free as a Bird, in that first video when it comes on, I was watching it live, like, why wouldn't I do the same thing for myself now? Like, I decided just to enjoy the hype, and I loitered around the internet for a couple days. I read all the takes. I blocked time on my calendar at work. I just put on my headphones and I listened, and like, if Paul felt compelled to finish it and he's telling me it's a Beatles song, and it's good enough for me. I don't know that I care what percentage is original and what isn't. And that's where I stand today. Like, I can surely revise that later. I'm really reserving, like, I'll say I think it's good, I've seen good takes, bad takes on it online. Like what I think where a lot of people are misusing is the term masterpiece. Like I'm seeing that a lot. Like the Beatles probably have 20 to 25 masterpieces, maybe I would say. Maybe I'm even being generous. I don't know. But like this song is not a masterpiece. It's very interesting how it all came together. But
it's a technical achievement.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think
absolutely.
In that perspective, give them all the production related Grammys and awards that are available for it. Because this is a technological marvel. Like this is, I think, a real turning point in music production history, I have to think. Because like, have they done anything of this quality on this kind of restoration, like on a song? I mean, obviously you had Get Back, and then before that you had kind of more, not lo-fi, but just not as good, technique in '94. Like this seems like it's like a real turning point for what can be done for especially legacy artists who have probably a ton of, 1-track or 2-track recordings that are sitting in boxes they don't know what to do with, like.
Right. Well, this is why the Revolver Deluxe set happened too, right?
Yeah.
This is like being able to go back to these tracks that they had bounced on top of other tracks, and you don't have control over them anymore. Now you do. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll lead us to get, the earlier albums, because I remember it's kind of amazing because even a few years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I hope we get a Revolver set. And everybody was like, no, that'll never happen. Because like you said, they mixed down the tracks too much, and now, we have it. It's tangible. So who knows what will happen. But I wanted to ask you guys, one of my impressions of the song was that it reminded me a lot of Woman.
Yeah.
From Double Fantasy. Did anybody else hear that, or is it just me?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah,
I absolutely do. And I think there's one of the things I kept coming back to, Allison, was like, I focused in on the bass at one point. I was like, oh, this is weird. It kind of reminds me of the bass that a George or a John would play when Paul's playing piano. And I'm like, oh, that's because John never really plays piano and sings lead on Beatles songs. That's after Beatles. Like, there's some of I'm the Walrus, he's playing electric piano, but he's not doing like an Imagine ever in the Beatles, right? Like that. Yeah. Maybe I'm missing something. I was trying to think off the top of my head, but and so I think it does totally harken to like solo John, because that's what we're getting, right? We're getting the John Lennon sitting in a piano with a vocal and a band supporting him in a way that makes it like it's a different Beatles-y thing, right? Because that was Paul's thing towards the end of the Beatles, to have the piano ballad and other people's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And on that note too, the first time I heard it at the listening, one thing that I took away, I was like, it sounds a lot like stuff that was on Chaos and Creation, and so it really reminded me of like Anyway on that album, the last track. It was really, that was my first initial takeaway from it, like at least the arrangement.
Yeah.
Just the sound of the piano and stuff. It sounds so like modern and compressed and like studio. Perfect. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I associate my ears to the Beatles. It's like you end up with this. It's recorded to tape in the '60s, and it's got flaws, and it has a certain tonal quality to it that this, especially the drums, are huge. Like when Ringo first comes in, like the bass drum, it's thumpy,
super modern sounding. Yeah.
And it's just it's a different sound than I kind of expect when I think of Beatles in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think if I had a wish and a hope that I could keep for this song, it would be that they had kind of mixed it more with that like early solo Lennon vibe of like maybe just a little more space around things and a little more room around it to let the songwriting shine. It is very full.
Yeah.
And my feelings on this one are complex. I've been trying to like all week be kind of binary about it and be like, do I think it's good or it's bad? And it's like, there are really wonderful things here. And there are things that I disagree with in the execution of it too, and like, that's probably the coolest part because it's going to continue to unfold. I'm going to want to go back to it to try and unwrap what I do think of it. I don't know that I'm there yet.
Yeah.
But can I say something?
So what you were speaking about before, I think we're experiencing a little bit just sort of future proofing of the Beatles, right? Like it's happening in the way the video looks. It's happening in the way this sounds a little bit. Like they don't want people in 30 years to think this sounds 100 years old, you know, like the Atmos, all this stuff. Like it's not how necessarily I'm choosing to listen to music, but it's probably the way things are going. Like, you know, I think that's part of the sound stuff that maybe we're not as relating to as much.
Yeah, I think the goal is to modernize the catalog for modern listening tastes, which unfortunately is brick walling and just compressing the shit out of everything until it's all just loud. And that's unfortunate for people that I think experienced it in its original kind of incarnation. But I think that's also just how they're choosing to go forward with the progress of the catalog. Allison, what were you gonna say something?
Well, if I could be a little controversial for a moment, I know people are heralding. How they sort of restored John's voice. I don't really hear it. Like I sort of hear like "Free as a Bird" on it. You know, the way it's sort of still like ghostly and eerie, and I don't hate it. I like it, but I just don't hear like pristine, clear, like properly recorded John. I hear demo John on it still, so I just don't. Does anybody else hear that, or do you guys disagree?
Kind of the weirdness of it, like you hear the different time periods in this recording, right? We've got this, like you're saying, they did the best. Like the thing they do with the restored John is they're not making it sound modern, but they're making it isolated, right? That's what they were able to do. That's the magic there, but it's still recorded to cassette to tape.
Yeah.
Cassette to tape. You said sort of cassette to tape? That's very
echo and stuff onto his voice, and that almost makes it sound like computer-y again.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the other thing is that, like we were saying before, there's so much happening in the song. At some point, it kind of settles into the background a little bit of everything that's happening, and then you have the "Free as a Bird" effect, where it's just there's so much happening, so you maybe don't hear the sonic imperfection of his original track. And also, like, it's obviously not a attempt at a master vocal take. Like he's singing lightly. It's tentative. So it's not what we would expect, like an on the mic, upfront, confident vocal attempt that you would get on most.
So you
songs.
Remember it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. He still didn't have all the words to what ended up being the chorus. Like the end of it, he's like, it's now and then I miss you, and then it says the last line. I want this all. He maybe says the word eternally, and then something returned to me. Like he's like kind of still like figuring out what those words are.
Yeah,
and they filled in. Obviously, I think they probably brought up Paul a little bit more in that part, and I don't know how they fixed John's vocal in there because that's not what he actually sang in the demo.
And I wish they would have had Paul write a proper bridge like they did for "Free as a Bird."
Yeah. There is a lot of talk about the bridge section that is cut from the original demo. And I was thinking about that because part of me was wondering, when they wrote the sections for "Free as a Bird," it gave him and George a chance to collaborate. And it wasn't seen as Paul running the show. And I almost wonder if maybe he decided not to do that. So it wasn't Paul's running the show and rewriting history, and now he's rewriting John's solo song. But that part of the song was not done. The lyric was only half there. That said, melodically, I love that part of the demo. I think it's one of the nicest parts. And I saw today, funny enough, somebody has stuck that into the new version and made that
pre-chorus part that they dropped.
I saw that.
Yeah. And the thing that I found is I don't think that's a pre-chorus. I think that'd be a bridge. Maybe that would have made a nicer solo section for a slide part, as opposed to Paul writing a verse, or writing a lyric over it.
That little part that they had removed, the "I don't want to lose you" part.
Mm-hmm.
Those chords are used for the guitar solo, just in a different key.
Yeah.
So they shifted it but I you can hear in the second, maybe the fifth bar or whatever, the solo, you hear the piano does a little the I don't want to lose you. You hear that in a little piano riff behind the slide guitar solo.
Oh,
It's something I didn't hear the first time around, but I heard it subsequent listens. I was like, oh, I know that melody.
Yeah.
John vocally is very like thin sounding at that part. Like I am wondering if they tried it and it didn't work, or if they are intentionally cutting it out because he says, abuse you, or
that was my other.
Are they censoring the song? Like I don't know.
I feel like that wouldn't be very woke of them.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you say that, to go back to just a second ago, that Paul maybe didn't want to steamroll the whole thing. Because another thought I had when I first heard it, I was like, Paul is Pauling too hard. Like he's just going full Paul on this track. Because like, in the documentary, he talks about like, oh, George recorded the guitar solo. So I wanted to do, pay a tribute to him by re-recording
doing the guitar.
Like, did he say he did a solo? I don't remember him saying that he done it.
He does the slide guitars.
Yeah, he re-recorded George's part.
Right. I just didn't remember him saying that George had done a solo as well. I thought he just George did rhythm guitars on it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, George did a solo, yeah.
We did that.
I was like, damn, Paul, like, let George have a goddamn solo, dude.
Yeah. We sent the credits over. We were looking at those the other day, and it's Paul on bass, vocals, piano, background vocals, guitar, harpsichord, shaker, slide guitar.
Yeah.
And then it's a bunch of the strings.
Last people listed are George Harrison and Ringo Starr.
And it's Ringo Starr on Instagram.
Yeah, right. But he's dancing in front of that mic that he maybe sings on in the song.
Oh my God, I like how
face on it.
I like how he has the old mic too. Like Paul's got the modern mic, but Ringo's got like the 40s, like sort of crooner mic. Like he's going to do an Elvis, like, hip shake or something.
Do y'all want to talk about the video? Or do y'all want to stick with the song for a minute?
I mean, I want to get to the video for sure.
Yeah.
I guess, ultimately,
it's all part of the same thing anyway. So.
Yeah.
Here's my last like full song feeling is I'm like trying to figure out what
I just want the listener to know that Tommy has switched to his zoomed in camera for this.
This is just for.
I think it's going to be pretty
real.
Going to be pretty important actually. So if we could
because my computer's overloading, couldn't handle the HD camera anymore.
If we could give him some space to make this.
Please support to our Patreon. No. So big Beatles week, obviously, right? BC the Beatles is back. Number 1, we get a Beatles song. Number 2, and then our friends Ranking the Beatles came out with a new episode last week as well. It was great, and I every single morning wake up with a song in my head. And I recently said this to, I think I was talking to Becker and some other friends we were hanging out with. Like, does that happen to everyone else? Does everyone wake? And most people are like, yeah, I wake up with a song in my head every morning. So I wake up Friday morning with a song in my head, and it is "You Know My Name, Look Up the Number." If that is the song, right?
With Sam, yeah.
But I'm like, shouldn't it have been Now and Then? Like, what does that say about the staying? Because I had a full 48 hours of struggling to absorb anything about this tune. Like, I would put it on and listen to it. This is the time I'm going to really get into it and listen to it. And 20 minutes later, be like, what is the melody? I don't know. And I've come out of that and I recall it now and it's there. It's a little more ingrained, but I don't know what that says, about like recency bias or anything like that, but it'll be interesting. I do think Freeze a Bird is a better song. I think it's a better recording. I think it's a better final product. I'm willing to plant my flag in that ground today. But
I'll join you on that island, Tommy.
You're there with me?
I am. In fact, like every time I started to think about the melody between like the first time I heard it when it came out, it would morph into Freeze the Bird for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like now and then, like it was the Freeze the Bird melody. I'm like, that's not it. It can't be that. It's Freeze the Bird.
I think it's probably a better final product than Real Love.
I agree.
At the end of the day, I think it sits. Yeah. If we're talking about these post Beatles recordings that they've made, Beatles recordings, I think it sits in the middle of the two. Like RB said, the technological achievement here is astounding, and it is a song, right? Like, and I'm not trying to be like, I'm not trying to degrade it in that. Like, it is a complete piece of art, and but that's where I am.
You don't typically judge your art by
technological achievement.
Correct. That is true.
So I don't know. I thought maybe I would be the harshest person on this tune, and I'm like, I kind of like it, and I think I like it better than Free as a Bird. Like, if I judge all of these songs on like what I put on, like, when is the last time everyone really hit play on Free as a Bird? We did it for a show 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago. I don't know that I've done it.
I wanted to make that comparison.
Yeah. Okay. Fairness. I listened to it again in contrast to this song. So I did listen to Free as a Bird in the last like 48 hours.
I do feel like I've played it late.
Podcast is about truth.
I have pulled it up lately just out of like, it's popped in my head for some reason. I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't heard that in a minute. And yeah, I do really enjoy it. And I do think it is a stronger song and product. I do hear things now that we have Now and Then. I do hear things that I want them to hopefully address in the inevitable, remixing and mal software run through that they will get. I think some of the things that make Now and Then really successful, you've got Ringo playing without a click track necessarily and not being like attached to the Jeff Lynne grid. Like, it actually sounds like Ringo's playing drums and not overdubbing each part individually. That was one of the things I loved in the documentary, was you see like a good 3 seconds of Ringo doing a hi-hat track, just playing click, dit, 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 and he's hitting the 2 and 4 on his leg with the other stick. And I'm like, that's how they built the drum track for the other two songs. I hate that part. Like, it just, it sucks the soul out of it. And I think that's one of the things I enjoy about this song, is it has that groove of Ringo actually playing, which I love. It's like when he hits that fill, it's like, there he is. That's Ringo. And there's a
comfortably at home.
Yeah,
in the drum.
It is tracksuit. And there's a great,
like, what looks like an extra bedroom. Like, Ringo doesn't have a dedicated drumming room. Like, it looks like maybe like Joe Walsh is sleeping on the sofa out of frame or something.
He definitely is.
Yeah. But like,
RB, did we get your opening thoughts? Your opening bid
about where I think this
yeah. I just want to make sure you're on the record before we go too much deeper.
Yeah, I think so when I listened to the John demo of this song, knowing that this was the song that was going to eventually become the Beatles song, before having heard it, having heard the Beatles version of it, I was like, really? Like, this is the song that we're going to build up? Like, it's almost all minor chords. It's like this a bit of like a dirge. You know what I mean? I feel like they've polished it up enough to, or maybe I've just listened to it enough now that it's in my head, and now it's, I can appreciate it more maybe. But I was really kind of surprised that this was even like up for consideration.
Sure.
Initially, I like the overall track. I think Free as a Bird is a better overall song. I like it as a song more than I like this song. I obviously like I did listen to Free as a Bird this week just to compare the sound of John's voice, knowing that like this was, that crappy cassette that they weren't able to isolate. And how does that sit in the mix versus this one? And yeah, I would love to hear a cleaned up version of both those other tracks. But yeah, I think I as an overall song, there's not a whole lot to it. There's like two parts that we get. That slide guitar solo, which is honestly, it's the part about the guitar solo that more interested me was listening to all the individual Beatles ahs and oohs they sniffed out of other songs, because they hit that one D major chord, and you're like, that's because it pops out at you. It goes D and it goes D minor, and you hear that and you're like, yep, that was the kind of like highlight of my first listen, of hearing that piece little pop out.
Yeah, the Beatles samples were really cool.
I think it was done in a very like classy way almost. Like it's not gimmicky, and I'm not downplaying like the Love compilation, but like that's very much like, this is a thing we're doing. Like, look at all the things. And this is just like, it's very nice backing vocals. I was really impressed by that.
It didn't feel like a mashup. It felt like
exactly
peacefully done background vocals. I actually kind of like the way that the arrangement ends. All of the phrases get a little bit shorter as the song gets toward the end, and then in the outro we're in groups of three bar phrase, and then we get it, like everything like funnels down and shrinks down, and they really play that up in the music video too. During the outro of all that stuff, you got all these, you're going back in time, and not to jump straight into the music video, but
we want to get there. Clearly,
we're going to do next.
What's shocking to me about the music video is that Allison told us she saw it in September. So clearly they had more time to work on it, because that was part of my thesis of this entire video. But it's not true.
And in fact, Becker, it's like if I'm honest, I thought it was a rough cut, because there were parts of it that I still think are pretty freaky. Like some of the AI freaks me out, like where they animate the photos and
what is that? Like, you're talking about the John Lennon. So
they animate, like the John especially freaks me out. But I think that there's that montage I think you're talking about where it's like the photos of them going back to like when they were kids, and it's just like slightly.
Oh, wait, this was a little flight animation.
I had no idea. No one's ever told me that before, that they came out of England in post World War II.
Right? Crazy. See, blowing minds. That's what we do. Right. BC the Beatles.com.
No, I meant that for Peter Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
He is the third BC the Beatles person. He's honorary, I guess. No, but like that, I think there's a shot of Hamburg John, where he like turns his head like a really creepy way. And I'm like, I just don't, the AI of imaging, I mean, it freaks me out in general, but it freaked me out in the video. And I was sort of like, okay, they're just, and some of the green screening, I was like, okay, like they're just rough. This is a rough cut.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, there's part of me that's like, oh, I thought Peter Jackson had like this supercomputer that's like the size of a house. And then I watched this video, I'm like, maybe he has just like a bunch of Packard Bells that are
he just typed it out.
Like it's like a LAN party at Peter Jackson's house, that he's just like editing.
A LAN party. Yeah, he just typed it at Chat GPT.
What would be? Yeah, I like when you're like, oh, it's my first music video, so I'm pretty proud of it or whatever.
Well, it gets
you've seen music videos, though, right? Like
the first 30 to 45 seconds are pretty good. You're like, I'm in. Like, I'm seeing them in the 90s sit down and
that
stuff, and you're like, that's it. Like, I'm here for this. This is really cool, and like seeing the.
And can we just shout out really quick the Susie and the Red Stripes drumhead?
Oh yeah,
Jordan shot. I was like, hell yeah.
Now there is some talk. Do they then CGI the drumhead into the Magical Mystery Tour drumhead, or is it actually swapped out in that footage? Because after you see Susie and the Red Stripes, it's later. It's the orange Beatles Love drumhead instead. And so we're like, they CGI the freaking drumhead too?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Did they just forget about having Susie and the Red Stripes in that earlier shot? And they were like,
I don't know. Yeah.
I think
that's so interesting.
Right. Yeah. Like, because it's looking great. And then all of a sudden you get these like
various bills faded,
like green screened hello, goodbye people next to people. Like, what is, and like the guitar is phasing in and out as it's going across people. And you're like,
it just looked like they had a lot of ideas, and they let like a bunch of different groups go off and do those ideas. And then they came back and were like, oh, we have to cut this together.
Yeah.
And someone did a creepy John looking into the sunset with Beatles.
I want to know who that was.
Yeah, that is
John. Somebody linked the actual footage, I don't know if it's a video or a picture, but it's a picture of it's John and Sean. I think they're somewhere in Japan. Like it is an.
Were they actually looking at the Beatles too?
They were, yeah. The Beatles actually were the sun. Of course, pretty amazing.
Wild.
There was this.
Yeah, they were floating through the sky.
The Beatles miracle. You're unfamiliar.
If it happens 3 times, then the Pope has to wreck.
It's mentioned in the book of John, Paul, George, and Ringo. When the video came out, Julia has been under the weather, so she's like sitting on the couch. So I go bring over the laptop. I'm like, here comes the video. We watch it. And when it gets to the scene in the studio where you've got Paul and Ringo doing anything, and then John and George pop up, she just goes, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
like she was out at that point. Like,
that was my thought too. Yeah. The green screen, I just can't.
Yeah, that's.
Well, and the other thing was like, why could Paul and Ringo not be in the same room to record
for the entire year? Even promo and all of that.
Yeah,
always Ringo and Paul have not been together. Wait, the Strings recorded in L.A.?
Yeah,
because Paul.
Oh, that's right. Because they shoot Capitol. I'm totally.
Yeah, and Ringo's here. He lives here. Yeah. So what the hell?
And like,
we can't meet at a delicatessen.
Right?
To the song.
Cantors, like, come on, guys.
Like, Paul is obviously on like a really nice like 4K HD camera, and Ringo is maybe on like an iPhone 10.
Barbara's like filming.
It looks really obviously different. But then even like there wasn't even a conversation of like,
but the Peter Jackson machine can't fix that,
right?
It can't match these two people. Like I don't understand that.
And like they even converse about like, what are we wearing for this? Let's be on the same page visually, so we look like we're in the same place. No,
we're all going to wear Ringo t-shirts, right?
Yes. I've got a
Ringo sent a care package to Paul and was like, I'm thinking about this tracksuit with mine. Paul was like,
why didn't they AI we're gonna wear Ringo tracksuits?
Some really strange choices.
Yeah. They should have just AI'd like Ringo t-shirts onto John and George. By
the way, George
just make it real.
90s. George's fit in the 90s is sick. He's wearing a plaid shirt with a striped shirt underneath and like a weird beanie. Like, I am in.
Hello, fellow
icon.
Well, just talk about his drip while you're at it, Tommy. Trying to appeal to the youth market.
Ringo's wearing like a little hat that's kind of biting Neil Peart's hats. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It's like a brimless, like I don't even know what you call
it. Reminded me of that time in the 90s when the Malcolm X movie came out and everybody was wearing X hats. Like, I was like, that's an interesting choice.
Just a little...
Yeah. Also, I had no idea that George had an earring until this video.
I saw it.
And there's a shot of it, and I'm like, he's got a friggin' earring. And then someone pointed out he had it in the 70s. He had two.
I was going to say, he had earrings in the 70s. When he had the perm, he had the earring.
God, the perm.
The overalls era?
Yes, the perm and the overalls era.
Yeah. The one thing that jumped out to me, being a music nerd, was seeing them play in the 90s, acoustic guitars. They both had a capo on the first fret.
Yeah.
What? This song is in A minor, E minor. There's no, like, unless they had, it was the 90s, so everyone's tuned down half a step.
We're going to do it like a grunge band. Yeah, I thought that was weird too. But it did make me feel like Apple kind of showed their ass with like, oh, hey, we have all this footage from the anthology sessions. So now like, they have to do something with that. They have to. Like, that's got to be in the works for 2025, I guess it would be.
Well, and then they have that footage of George shooting with whatever that like Sony Handycam.
Yeah, like
he's got that big ass Handycam there.
Yeah,
like what's all that footage? Yeah, and clearly that's the best part of the video, right? Like that's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
The weird moment where the guy from the Strings is like looking up and they cut to him. Like, why do we care about the Strings in this video? Like that, I didn't understand at all. Like, are we making a behind the scenes video of this, of the making of this, or are we not? Like, I don't know.
And it was so when John is conducting the Strings, right, and we get that, and then he's dancing, and then we cut to Paul. Is Paul supposed to be looking at John? Like, what is the narrative here?
Yeah, I don't action shot.
There's also double Paul, like in the control room.
Yeah, that's weird. They double Ringo. They put Ringo into his like practice space bedroom. He's in there, younger and older Ringo.
See, I like the shot of like, you mean Joe Walsh's bedroom, okay?
Guys, Ringo's over here in the corner of my room the whole time,
under the blanket.
I think that Ringo shot too. Like,
I did too. I like the shot of
that. That really echoes the now and then theme of the whole thing, right?
I didn't understand. It just felt all mashed together. Like I just didn't like. What are we getting out of this? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the shots of the juxtapose. I think some of those are really, really cool. Like, I liked the Magical Mystery Tour shots where they had, John and George, or they had Paul, like the four of them sort of configured differently, like, you know, the young and the present. But I loved the shot of Ringo drumming next to, like, you know, 1967 Ringo. I thought that was really, really neat. Like, that was one of the more tastefully done AI shots, I felt like. But I mean, also, like, you know, we're talking about Free as a Bird. It's like, you compare this video to Free as a Bird. It's like Free as a Bird is going to come out, for me, at least, on top. Oh, yeah. It was just such a cool concept video, you know?
I did so much with such little technology, especially for them to, like, right now, I'm sure that people are looking at Free as a Bird who are fluent in production techniques now. But for them to have done Free as a Bird at the time, like, is, I think, pretty amazing, you know?
Yeah.
And again, for all the technology that we're talking about here, for them to give us nothing that's even close, you know? And I think it's this mistake that the Beatles are making in their modern times of just, like, who they're choosing to work with. Like, why is Peter Jackson, a 60-something-year-old man, making your music video in 2023? Like, I don't understand. Why is an 85-year-old artist making the cover art for this record? Like, I just, like, if you're gonna do it in 2023, like, give it to a new voice, you know? And that's just not happening, you know? And I think it hurts them, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's a fresh perspective that could come out of it. And maybe they're afraid of it. Maybe it's like they have more control of some of this other stuff. Like, you know, Peter Jackson's in the pocket of big Beatles, I would assume.
I think you also run the risk then of, like, if they go for somebody younger and, you know, more, you know, at hipper and more of the moment, you run the risk of, like, trend chasing and then maybe dating things and also seeming like, I hate to say seeming more out of touch, because, like, it feels like sometimes this kind of video is like, what are we doing here, guys? But, like, maybe it's an even bigger issue with, you know, somebody else. I don't know. That is a really good point, though.
The best part of me gets the narrative that they're reaching for here and fall short of, right? Yeah. Like, that it's all about this, you know, John reflecting on and appreciating these moments, and that they are finishing the job for him afterwards, and it's this long journey and this whole thing. It's just the execution falls so short. It you know, especially, and it falls shorter and shorter as the song progresses, you know? Yeah. You look at, last thing I'll say about Free as a Bird maybe is the very end of Free as a Bird has that George on ukulele thing.
Oh, yeah.
That is so cool in the video, and so, you know, it's just such a quintessential moment, and it's so Beatlesy to do something.
And the closing John remark there as well.
Yeah. So you do something little and weird at the end of the song. You know, that it's a Strawberry Fields thing, this different journey you go on at the end towards it. And this, whether it's the song, the video, whatever, plays it safer in a way that it ends up missing the Beatlesiness of the thing.
And it's funny you say that too, because you know who loves a freaking, like, hidden track / fade out is Paul McCartney. You know, he loves to stuff, you know, like a hidden track onto the end of his albums. You know, you look at you know, Off the Ground, you know, for example, an album that I will defend with every fiber of my being. But, you know, so it's surprising they didn't, like, just stuff something little onto the end.
Wait, how did they not find a Paul piano demo from 1974 that they end up hacking something on the end of it or whatever? You know, it would have been really neat.
Those are for Ringo there's a tape that says for Ringo on it. That when Paul passes, we'll get passed over and he'll finish all these tunes.
I do think also...
Oh my God, please.
I do think there also is, like, an element of, like, you know, the Beatles have historically been very good about never repeating themselves, you know, whether it's musically or visually or, you know, with artwork or graphics. And I felt like one of the things I was worried about with this song was, like, trying to cram it with, like, all these little, like, super Beatle-y things that make it almost like a rattle, like a Ruddles type thing. And it's like, you know, even on Free as a Bird, like, you get the little George thing. Paul's doing kind of like a variation of the Come Together bass line on that coda on Free as a Bird. So it's like they're putting the little things in there for you. And it's like, they don't have to do it every time, because then it's like, you're right, it's gimmicky. So I get, you know, maybe just playing it safe and making it a bit more of a stately-esque track to try to, you know, close the chapter with, so to speak. But yeah, on the whole, you know, I find myself yeah, I find myself really enjoying the song. I think, like what Becker was saying, like I just chose to let myself enjoy this and relish in the fact that at 42 years old, I get to feel the same thing I felt when I was 14 and Free as a Bird came out. Cause like, that's a pretty amazing moment to get to have that kind of thing again. And for all intents and purposes, this is probably the last time that's happening. Like, I'm sure we'll get unreleased stuff on box sets, but like, this is the last, quote unquote new track I think we're getting. And I really, I've thought there was a couple of like fan made versions of this that have been around for a while that are really interesting, that do have some of that like pastiche kind of things. Like they do some of the backing vocals from the tracks that are very obvious, like love is old, love is new lines, like as opposed to just like finding like ahs and oohs and things. They're overly psychedelic. So I was kind of like anticipating a bit of that listening to this version, and I was very glad that none of that existed as soon as I heard it, because it was like sometimes it's nice to just have like a straight ahead kind of thing, and this is more of that. But yeah, all in all, like, man, I'm a fan of this. Like, I think the melody is great. I genuinely love the verse melody. I think is fantastic. It's beautiful. It's a haunting melody. And like
that's the hook of the song. That first line it's what's echoed in the guitar solo and the outro. It's the hook of the song.
Yeah. And like you were saying earlier, RB, like it's all in minor keys, which they never, like, I can only think of like maybe 3 Beatles songs that are like dominant minor keys throughout. Like everything is almost always major keys. So like it's different territory, which I think is also a divisive thing because it's not what you expect from a Beatles song. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like there's so many moments of beauty in it that like I'm just so happy to have those, especially like these days. It's like, God damn, here they are again, like making everybody smile and not think about everything awful happening in the world. It's like, hey, we can talk about this amazing moment like one more time. How cool.
I think I'm curious to get your thoughts on the marketing campaign and calling it the last Beatles song. I thought it was a bit macabre.
Yeah.
Especially, you have Paul and Ringo being like, oh, cool. Like, you're talking about mortality here. And somebody, I forget which one of you tossed out the word dirge, and like you're saying, like it's minor key, it's, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I have mixed feelings on the last Beatles song tagline.
I do too. I found it just weird because whenever you get the next box set, there's going to be unreleased stuff that no one's heard, and that's going to cause confusion in the general public who aren't going to go, well, the last thing was a new song, and they're not going to care about it. They're just going to care about being fed new, unheard material. So yeah, I think that's kind of a weird route to have gone. I'm not crazy about that.
Yeah, especially introducing this new technology where, hey, we can separate tracks now, but this is going to be the last one.
Well,
we won't do it again.
Not to mention that, you mentioned the technology that regular everyday fans have been using online. Like, the one thing that sticks out in my mind is, I don't know who it was, but they overdubbed like young Paul's voice onto the tracks from the album New. And I was like, damn, like these are great. Yeah. Like it's very convincing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty scary. There's like no limit.
We spent one night just like listening to that all together, all like the fan stuff. I was like,
yeah, or like Paul singing like Daydream Believer. Like what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have done that. Should they have younged Paul's vocal here, do you think?
I mean, there's so many ethics involved.
Yeah, I respect it.
Should they have done that on Now and Then? That's an interesting, or at least 70s.
Should they made it a nice wings,
like wings?
Yeah. Well, I think that having old Paul like it's more of that Now and Then thing, right?
I agree too, RB. I'm with you.
It is freaky to hear like John in the 70s and Paul's current voice. Mm-hmm. I think that's actually one of the things I like the most about it, because it's just so like it's the contrast makes it really interesting. Yeah, it's jarring. It's a good word for it.
I think like, and you want the Beatles to make you uncomfortable at times. That's a part of why, because when we were young and we first started listening to them, there were things that were dangerous. that we didn't necessarily understand at the time and were uncomfortable or whatever. This is uncomfortable in a wildly different way than something like Happiness is a Warm Gun, because it's more about the cycle of life and the fact that you're leaving and you don't have a choice in that, right? Like, that is pretty cool.
And like the Beatles are like trapped in this like eternal kind of world of being in their 20s. Like, as they exist on record, the Beatles are eternally 20-something years old. And so they kind of they even now still represent this like youthful hope and kind of energy and fun. And then to get a totally different side of it from a member who is in his late 30s and is technically no longer here. And then another person who's not been here for 20 years. And then these two guys are in their 80s. Like, it's a very human, real moment of going, well, yeah, like, holy shit, we are all going to die at some point, and life is very fleeting, and you do lose the ones you love, and that's a really heavy moment. So like it's cool, like in that way, like it very much like turns the mirror in on everybody, which is what they always kind of do in some way.
Womp womp.
Thanks, Beatles. We're all gonna die.
God damn it.
Here's what I'll say. In terms of Paul McCartney output this year, better than Bite My Head Off.
The bass tone on that's way better though on this one. What do y'all think they're? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did we mention the cover getting teased before the song came out? And
we need to talk about this artwork.
Man. We're talking about the Beatles having sort of, they don't have a great through line of artwork. They do in the 7 inches. I feel like the 45s. There is creative unity in that a little bit, which is probably just the format of the time. But in cover to cover, they vary a ton and played with a bunch. But I was bummed to see the cover of this come out. Like I was also hoping that it was not real, or there was something else coming, or like I didn't understand.
I do not care if it calls back to those staircase photos. It is ugly as shit. Like, what is up with this?
And why
this graphic designer? He did the same thing with McCartney 3. It's like, this is like someone in your 9th grade Photoshop class being like, "Oh, they have gradients. I can use those in the background. Look at that. The green turns to black over time." And that
I said in the Blotto Beatles episode already, it's coming out, but it the font is also like an Edgar Allan Poe book cover or something. Like I don't know what it is. Like it seems to have nothing to do with, like, I don't believe this that he had heard the song. Like, I don't think this has anything to do with it.
It's like, that's another thing that we saw at the listening session, and I was like, oh, mock-up. So I was very shocked when I saw it on the internet. I was like, what? So it is real. Okay.
I would have just taken an alternate photo. I would have happily taken an alternate photo of some Beatles moment or something. And again, I get it that they didn't want to maybe just tread in that they were still like, all right, we're making a new song, we're making a new piece of art. Like, we're not going to give you the same shit. And so I respect that. I just don't know that they have the right people doing that. I don't know.
You know what? Like do they call it like a title card on the video where it has the 4 of them?
Yeah.
Where it's got like, I thought that was really poignant. Mm-hmm. That would have been a great cover with, like current Paul and Ringo, and then George in the 90s, and then John, like probably 1980. Because they all sort of look similar. Obviously John's a lot younger, but I thought that was striking to me when I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird choice. And I think Paul has always kind of fashioned himself as somebody who like works with his contemporaries and feels, of the moment, but his contemporaries are also 85 years old.
Yeah.
And not always putting out the greatest thing you ever saw. Yeah. I was relieved to not see the Drop T logo on something for a change, because it was like, oh, that's a change of pace, because everything has the same logo on it, which just feels like McDonald's branding sometimes. So I was kind of okay with it for that reason. But on the whole, like, I don't know. The cover, like, I just don't care. Like, I'm more concerned with the song. Like, the covers of the singles for Real Love and Free as a Bird, like, don't really stick in my craw at this point in life.
Oh, you're saying I should let it go? Much like Frozen. I should.
Yeah, he was like Elsa this one. Just Elsa.
I would let it go, except that I spent $25 on this.
You and me both.
I'm not sure. I don't know how they're justifying that. $23.99 for this 45.
That's a lot for a 7-inch record.
But I will say, when I listen to Now and Then, I had my headphones on, and then it went straight into the new Let Me Do. I was pretty impressed with that, actually.
Before we get into Love Me Do, flip that guy over, because I think the back cover.
The back cover is awesome.
Why is this not the front?
And do you guys know the story behind the back cover?
I don't heard it today.
Yeah. The story, for those of you who haven't heard it, is that, when Paul called Olivia and he was like, we're going to finish the song. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think George would be into it? And she sort of caught sight of this piece of art on the mantle piece, and I can't remember who the artist is. I'm so sorry. Maybe you guys know. But she sort of saw it, and she took the clock as like a, sort of omen of Now and Then. And she was like, I think George would be okay with it. So that was the piece. And I liked that it came from George World, like that's really nice to have.
It's a better cover.
And it's a better cover. It should have been the cover. Yeah.
Here's the only thing I'll say about the cover that was, have you guys seen the cassette version of the cover? It looks way better as the cassette version.
The single is way better. I like the single.
Oh, just the way the artwork is on the cassette.
Yeah, just way, because they do like an homage to the Blue Album thing, where it's like the blue background. It says the Beatles on top, and then the Now and Then is just taking up the bottom half of the cassette cover.
I like when records do that. And keep the cassettes do that to keep the aspect ratio.
That's the only time I'm like, this looks really good. So, what do we think about Love Me Do on the other side?
I was just really happily taken with it. Like, to be real honest, I mean, it just sounded fantastic. And for me, like, I really wasn't expecting much. I was like, I don't know why this is, I guess they had to put something here. But then for like I said, I just played it on Spotify, and for Now and Then to go into Love Me Do, like, I thought it was fantastic. Like, we're separating drums and things like that. Like, I think the sound staging is fantastic. I think the drums sound great. I think that harmonica part is fantastic in a new way. Like, it feels so clear, and like, it almost feels like they're in like a dead room playing the harmonica. Like, it's great.
Well, you can hear John take like deep exhales before the harmonica, which is like, that's really cool. Like, you've never heard that before. Like, that's pretty amazing.
And yeah,
I like
impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I like that, my favorite thing about it is like, we have this ending, and then guess what? You can start all over again, with Beatles. And I think maybe that was their intention. I don't know, but I really like that part of it.
Yet again, another Now and Then.
Right, it's the first last with Now and Then. The first release and the last release is, it completes the poetry. And we recorded, as Becker said, an episode that hasn't come out yet of Blotto Beatles. It is going to come out in a couple weeks, where we're kind of preambling. I don't even know if this stuff will end up keeping in, but at the time I said, I think I stand by this. Like, so I get the poetry of Love Me Do, the first last, and teasing us into, this is the next step in what you're going to hear in this Beatles stuff. You're going to hear the early records, and we're going to break that down, and it's going to sound different than you ever heard. And I'm excited for that. I wish instead on this single, they did the A-side is this Beatles recording of Now and Then that we hear. Why not on the B-side do the entirely cleaned up demo of the John Lennon version, just him sitting at a piano, make those two separate tracks, treat them however you want, and give us what it was that they heard, that they got to mess with. I think that would have been a really cool process thing for us to hear and understand as well.
I would think, there's a really great article on the website mixonline.com talking about the making of this. And one of the things it alludes to is that the discussion of will this technology be applied to Free as a Bird and Real Love? And whoever they're talking to from Apple was kind of cagey, but said like that project will be revisited, soon. Which leads me to think that for the anniversary for that in a couple of years, we're going to get an expanded new anthology. I would love to see in whatever box set configuration that comes, and look at that puppet dog. Oh my God, I've lost my train.
It's a cute puppy, Allison.
Sorry, I just picked up our poodle. Hello.
Blotto.
Waving hello to everybody.
Love it.
Audio hello.
Whatever format that comes out in its reissue, I would love to have these 3 songs and their 3 respective demos.
That'd be cool.
In addition, I would love to get some session stuff from the first 2, if that exists. I have to think there's got to be some kind of, outtakes from that, and even if you made, I complained a lot on the last on the Let It Be box set about the inclusion of a 4-song 12-inch EP that, when you broke it down, was priced at the same as as an LP that was full of music. I've never once played the EP that was included in that box set. Yeah. I would love to have an EP with these 3 songs and their 3 demos.
Yeah.
I would willingly pay for that in an expanded anthology set.
I think it can't come out of this, to Tommy's point, I think it can't come out at the same time, because it just opens up everyone being like, well, the demo was better. Why did they do anything? The demo was better. Like, this cleanup demo was...
now. They're already doing that now.
For now and then?
Yeah.
Well, because it's out there in the world.
Yeah, because it's been out
for people.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the greater public is not like comparing and contrasting on day one. Yeah. Right. I have no doubt that people are going back and saying like, we've had the demo and here it is, and it's a better tune. Of course, those who want to go and hear it, but I think it can't be released at the same time, because it's like, well, we spent all this money to do all this work, hired all these.
You mean like now?
Yeah,
not then. But no.
No, I'm talking then.
Yeah.
Seeing some of the cleaned up shots from like the 60s that were in the music video made me like really want them to like reissue Anthology with like, we've remastered all of this video that you've seen that looks like it's, VHS quality, and now it's like 4K. You know what I mean? Like, there was a couple scenes.
If they redropped remastered Anthology on Disney Plus, I would be stoked.
It has to be coming, right? Like, there's no way that's already in the works.
Yeah.
Don't you guys think that's inevitable?
Yeah.
Right?
I thought that's what this project was going to be. Like, it was close enough in time. This song is from the same sessions. It seemed, and Anthology's been unavailable for so long. It seemed like, well, the time is probably right, because we've just done this massive get back thing. Now we want to give the whole story. Like, this would be the perfect time. And so I was really shocked when it was like, no, it's the Red and the Blue album. It's like, okay.
Which is a weird call
in
and of itself, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I love the Red and the Blue albums were probably, I've talked about this a bunch, huge entry points for me into the Beatles world.
Yeah.
But the narrative of how you consume music was so different then.
Yeah. It's so weird that this is on the Blue album now.
What were you saying, Harvey?
Blue album.
I said, isn't it weird that Now and Then is going to be the last song in the Blue album, where they're just like, disregard, Freeze a Bird and whatever. Like, this is just now like, bloop. It's the title of the record ends in 1970, and then we get this and it recorded.
Yeah.
It does seem weird.
Album. They should have like saved it until I don't know, Anthology Revisited comes out.
That's what I really was kind of surprised about. But Apple makes decisions that are strange to some of us. So who knows?
I do wish I could just sit around and throw Anthology on the Disney Plus. I don't know why I'm paying for Disney Plus. Like, I don't know. I haven't rewatched Get Back yet.
What about Mando? How are you doing on Mando?
I'm not into all the. I'm having a hard time with this.
Well, they just bought Hulu, so it's all going to coalesce into one massive money suck at some point that you'll have to pay for when Anthology Deluxe comes out in 2024, 25.
There's so much garbage that is put on TV occasionally where, like, I would watch 30 minutes of Anthology all of the time. That would be fantastic.
100%.
Paul and Fine cardigans behind the wheel of the ship. I love that part. Whose boat is that?
I mean, you want to talk about drip.
Right.
Fall 90s. Come on.
Yeah, real,
like pre-Heather drip. It just hits different.
Yeah. How is Paul looking so good right? Like,
you said like vibes in the 90s.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Matthew Perry.
But right now, like he's got the casual jacket game down really well. And like, I do have a fantasy about jackets where I'm always like, oh, there's the perfect jacket out there that I haven't bought yet or something. And Paul seems to have them all.
You and I are like cut from the same cloth, my friend. I'm the same way about jackets.
It's denim. That cloth is denim.
It's denim. Waxed denim, raw denim, all the denims.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful when your daughter is a really good fashion designer to go, Dad, you shouldn't be looking like an 85-year-old man because you're fucking Paul McCartney. So
yeah, we'll make him look like a 75-year-old man.
Yes. I think also he looks so much better because he's not dyeing his hair. Like,
amen.
When I see this now from like 5 years ago, I'm like, bro, you look like an idiot.
Like, it looks like cheap dye too. Yeah. It's not like, and silver mecha. Like when he started to let his like sideys go gray, we were like, yes. And then he dyed it. We're like, fuck. But then when he went full silver mecha with like the silver stubble, he looks great. Yeah. I mean, he just looks, he looks amazing.
Yeah. It's very much a style resurgence for him because there was a rough patch for a while.
Oh yeah.
It was the 80s
for sure.
Yeah.
And, I've got to say, we talk about Paul, but like, and again, not to like, MD Braggy McBraggerson, but I was on the media line for Ringo's birthday in Beverly Hills. And, I stood this far from him and I was just like, how the fuck is he turning 83 today? Like, it is unreal. And he had like a little stage set up probably like 3 feet off the ground or something. And like he hopped up and hopped off of it like 3 times. And I'm like, I couldn't do that on my best day, So it's like, damn, like what the hell fountain of youth are these guys drinking from?
I think his go-to
can they
answer,
sell it?
His go-to answer is that he eats broccoli
Joe Walsh
meal and Joe Walsh.
Yeah,
Joe Walsh had blood transfusions in 95.
Yes, the secret is hidden in his emoji code.
Yeah,
like I've been telling you all along. Yeah. How was the Ringo's birthday thing?
It was great. Actually, we're gonna. He parties every year. Like he throws himself a little party. Yeah. There's usually some pretty good like finger food, pretty good cake, and has a little concert for himself. Then at noon, of course, it's like the peace and love bullshit. And so it's but we're going to talk about it on a future episode. But I did get to talk to him for about a minute, so we're going to air that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but it's a good job. But it's always so fucking hot. Obviously, it's like early July in LA, so I always end up with a sunburn. It's always my Ringo sunburn.
Nice.
Well, how do we feel?
Yeah, I think let's everybody, give us your minute elevator pitch, one way or the other. What are you thinking? And this is by no means written on your tombstone. Everyone will probably change their opinion in 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years.
Definitely writing this on Becker's tombstone. In case you're wondering, this is.
I don't even want you to come to my funeral. I think it's very presumptuous that you guess that.
I know that was loaded. That was a loaded statement.
Oh, I'm burying you, buddy. Yeah.
If you don't think my daughters have my wishes for your tombstone already, or sorry.
For me, it's just going to be longevity. I think the luxury of Blotto Beatles is that we are ranking songs as we go. And so we have an incredible road ahead of us still, where we've only done 72 tracks or something like that. So I think the real luxury for us is that maybe we just shelve this and talk about it in 2 years or something like that, and then really get to go back and be like, what does it mean? Have I listened to it? That's the biggest thing for me. Like, am I going to put this on? Am I going to make the decision to listen to Now and Then in a month, in 3 months? I don't know. I'm not
More
sure.
importantly, you got to decide on the secret word.
Yeah,
for Now and Then.
Yeah. Yeah, Scott can't. Scott's not here tonight. I want to address that.
Oh yeah, we didn't say that. Scotty couldn't be here tonight. He did. He's on vacation with his family and said he only got to listen to the song on his phone, which I imagine meant he just held his iPhone speaker up to the ear.
He didn't want to comment. He's in LA though. He could have just rolled over to
I know. Could have been hanging with Alex.
Hey, yeah. He could have been part of my blurry background.
just hanging out back there yelling his feedback. It's much like him as part of Blotto Beatles. But so that's where I stand. I want to, I've enjoyed this past week, and I'm gonna see where it sits with me.
Allison, how do you feel?
I think for somebody who wasn't around, well, I was around, but I wasn't aware of the anthology. When it came out, I was, pretty young. And so I wasn't there for the Freezebird sort of premiere, but I've heard so much about it, So I think for me, especially this coming out in the time of the internet age and getting to see, like you referenced, Becker, like the discourse and the excitement around it and just everybody posting about it and, it being such a united front where whether you like it or not, everybody's talking about it and streaming it. And, it's a pretty interesting thing for a new Beatles single to come out and the Beatles and the Stones to be releasing new music in 2023. And, the Beatles having the #1 song. And, it's something that I think future generations will be jealous that, we got to experience that. And as far as the song itself, just grateful to have it, grateful to have it and grateful that we're still getting new box sets and, that Giles Martin's doing his thing. And, and I'm a Giles Martin, I love his stuff a lot. So I'm excited to hear the Red and Blue albums in their entirety. But, I just think it's been a really exciting week. And I'm also interested to see what the legacy of Now and Then is going to be, how people are going to remember it in a couple of years.
Yeah. RB, how about you, Ben?
I am happy that this song exists in the world. I know it's I feel happy that it feels like the song has probably been haunting Paul for ever, right? He's even during the anthology times, he was like, I'm gonna finish the song. He was determined.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy that it's out there. I'm happy that we get to listen to it. Obviously, technical achievement and all that. I'm thrilled that that Peter Jackson made the Get Back thing and made this all possible. Because if it weren't for him getting involved in that Get Back project, we wouldn't have had him. We wouldn't have had this song. Probably we wouldn't have had the Revolver set. We probably wouldn't have had Paul singing with John live on stage during his shows. With that bit that he grabbed out of the rooftop. But this song, I'm glad it's out there. It's been 4 days that I've heard it now, and I've listened to it a bunch. And it's hard to formulate a solid opinion after 4 days, I think. But
I appreciate you sucking up to Peter Jackson, but I don't think he's going to come on the pod after what we said about the video. So I think you can let it go.
Or the shot.
It was just his first try, guys. It's the first video. Only room to go up from here.
But has he seen a music video before?
Maybe.
Tommy, what do you think?
One thing that we didn't mention that is so dear is, of course, it's called Mal. How lovely is that?
That is
that warms my heart.
I can't wait to read this Mal book.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I just started it. I'm 40 pages in, and it's really, really good. Ken.
I'm so excited to read it.
Yeah. I think it's great also because it really there's a bit of Mal Evans that is going to live on in entertainment industry for generations now.
I thought you were about to say there's a bit of Mal Evans in all of us. That's what I thought you were going to say. There's just a little bit of Mal in each of us. Which maybe
every time you get the urge to whack an anvil, it's just
a desire for songs.
Anytime someone says you to run an errand that you don't really think is worthwhile, Mal's inside of you.
That's Mal.
Tommy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I've said it, right? It's I'm still processing. I'm still trying to unfold and unpick what I truly think this thing is. I think Becker had a great point by saying we have a great luxury here in that I get more time to think about it before I have to fully plant a flag in the ground. And that's great because recency bias is a thing, right? And like, whether I loved it or hated it this last week, the better part is listening over months and years to try and figure out what I think. I'll stand by. I think Freeze a Bird is better. If you're asking me,
that feedback surprised me tonight a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I was surprised by it. I was going to say this is, I thought, agreeable the first, like we would go 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it's
now and then,
but just the idea of, you know, the Beatles legacy and the idea that Paul and Ringo are still part of it and pitching in, and you know, we all look at swaths of our lives that were important at a time, and then you're forced to move on, right? Like that were these big pivotal things, and then you're like, and that's my history, and how do I not make that Bruce Springsteen's glory days, right? Like, and
yeah.
But you know, the idea that we all value this thing, this contribution to humankind, and they're like, and we do too, right? Like, this was important to us in our 20s and was something really wild and different, and we think it's important to still pitch into it. Like, there is absolute value there. So that's where I am at.
Yeah. I've thought about it, you know, a lot. Like, I'm really happy with how the song came out. Like, I think when you get stuff like this, you run the risk of being like embarrassed for them if it's bad, or like embarrassed as a fan to like something that is kind of shitty. But I think this is really good, and I'm really happy with how it came out. I don't, like you guys, I don't know where it's going to sit for me in a year. I don't know how I'm going to rank it, because I've predicated this whole thing on 223 songs, because who would have thought there'd be another one coming out in 2023? So at some point I have to figure out how to do that, and where I'm going to put an asterisk on it.
You should probably just start over.
I mean, my wife will legit divorce me if I start this podcast again.
Yeah, I like that you're like, oh, Julia's sick today. She's not coming on the sick of the Beatles.
Let the record show, like air quotes around the word sick.
She is on the couch sick, unfortunately. But you know, I think I've got to live with it for at least a year to formulate some kind of, you know, place for it. But yeah, I'm like you guys. Like, I'm really, really happy that we get to have this moment and enjoy this thing together. Like, as fans of that band, and as people that have gotten to know each other, like, we have a new thing that we can talk about and be fucking excited about, and that's so cool. You know, another thing for me, like, I feel like maybe I'm like a big sap. I really am into like the emotional aspect of stories, especially like human stories, and the Paul and John friendship is, you know, a really big thing. And I do genuinely buy into, like, this has been something that Paul has like needed to do for 30 years. Like, whatever the truth is behind who the song is for, how it was written, you know, what the intent was, like, it obviously really means something to Paul, because he's no doubt spent 30 years thinking about this song a lot. And for me, like, I'm glad to see that he's seen this through, because I'm sure it probably means a whole lot to him. I feel like sometimes he gets kind of like accused of being like robotic and just like wanting to, you know, be the head guy in charge and, you know, do whatever. But I think this is like a very human, not a redemption moment. It's not redemption. It's, I don't know. It's like he's seen his quest through, you know, for this. And so I feel really good for him for that. So I've got a lot of, you know, happiness around it for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm really, really happy. This week has been awesome. Like, what a great time to be a fan of this band. It's been really, really cool. So yeah.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah. Well, we did.
I think maybe we love that we got.
Yeah,
this was awesome, and this is kind of our just to mark a moment in time. This is our second kind of roundtable discussion for new Beatles stuff since
Pod extravaganza
doing these podcasts.
Right?
Like, what a cool thing that a band that's been broken up for 50-ish years, we still get the opportunity to uncover new things together.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we go around real quick. Just tell we're all going to maybe. I think, are we all putting this on our feeds coming up, or if we want to?
Yeah.
Regardless, I think it's important we all say who we are and where we're from. I'll start. Blotto Beatles. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. That's blottobeatles.com. We would love it if you haven't heard us, if you give us a listen. Jonathan, what do you got?
I am one half of the team behind Ranking the Beatles. We do the same thing as Blotto Beatles, only sober. Sometimes.
Fun.
And you can check us out on all your podcast platforms and at rankingthebeatles.com.
Allison, how about you?
I am one half of Because the Beatles. That's BC the Beatles and internet speak. And we are BC the Beatles everywhere across social media. We're bcthebeatles.com. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And we have yet to be on Ranking the Beatles, but and I will try.
We've exchanged a whole bunch of emails, and then y'all take breaks. I get it.
I know. Well,
it's okay.
We're back, baby.
Let's do it.
But I will say the drunkest I've ever been in my adult life was when we did Blotto Beatles. So
we heard about it.
I'm going to put that in my Apple Podcast review. I still have not had Fireball since. So
fair.
That's an adult learning for all of us.
We were in the heart of COVID for that episode. Like things.
That's true. It was middle.
There was like a crazy desperation of the times, and it was just nice to make a connection with people.
We were all feral at that.
That was a fun episode.
It was a lot of fun.
I don't remember a lot of it.
I don't recall. But
you were eating French fries at one point. I remember.
Was I?
Yeah, I think so.
You liked one of my regular French fries while you were drunk.
Oh God,
that's all right. I'm eating on the pod all the time. I'm like, Scott's like, stop eating pretzels on the frontier. Anyways, I love all of your shows.
You guys are
the best. I love right.
Yeah, big fan of all you guys.
And the wild thing is that as the five of us came together, we're all wearing shirts with Ringo on them. I didn't expect that when you all signed on. That's amazing. So
that's all I own.
I didn't start this show even wearing a Ringo shirt. I don't know how this happened.
We started with no shirt on. It was
So I think we should probably end with 3 words. Maybe those 3 words that we all say are this. Peace
and
love.
Thanks so much for listening to BC the Beatles. We hope you enjoyed reliving those exciting early November days with this roundtable discussion. And if you enjoyed our friends at Blotto Beatles and Ranking the Beatles, head on over to their feeds too for lots of fantastic episodes. We've put links to both pods in the show notes.
As always, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening right now, and give us a rating/review so other Beatlemaniacs can find us.
And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter/X, and TikTok. We'll be posting photos and more from this episode and beyond.
Remember, you can always email us at bcthebeatles@gmail.com as well.
We'll see you in 2024.
Bye.
Bye.